Hi guys, welcome in. This is the OBR Film Breakdown Podcast. Pretty pumped about some discussions here post-draft and talking to a bunch of different guests as we look at where the Browns will take these draft picks, talk about the film reviews, and talk about any number of different things you guys want us to talk. We got some exciting plans for where we're taking the channel at some point. You know, we're gonna do some fun coach study things and talk about football 101s and how this group connects with whatever they do next year, you know, personnel-wise, translating to defensive schemes, offensive schemes, what they're going to do to innovate. We'll do as many different things as we can. I want to welcome on to the show good friend of mine, John Colosimo, who does a great job with his Nothing But the Dawgs podcast, and his co-host, Mike Krupka. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Jake?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're going to talk real quick about the day 3 picks and what we thought of them. There was really only one pick in there that I was thinking they would make, put it that way. Not that I didn't like the picks, but just one that I was thinking they would make. So I just kind of want to know your thoughts on those day 3 names and who stood out to you, and even Marvin Wilson, who seems to be like an extra 7th round draft pick essentially.
Yeah, I like Marvin Wilson as much as most of those picks, to be honest. It looked like a lot of these picks were either kind of taking some shots on some guys that may have been a little bit under the radar or for specific purposes. Obviously, in terms of when we're looking at the season, Tommy is the one who stands out as somebody that I wanted and had targeted as some depth at the 3 tech. So that would be the one that stands out. And then you get some extra DT help signing the big UDFA contract with Wilson. The rest of them, to be honest, not a ton to get excited about here as we sit here and now from my view.
Yeah, it was if you start with the 4th round pick, James Hudson, I did not expect that route to be taken. We talked leading up to this thing about I would say we talked leading up to this about the need of alignment at some point. They have Michael Dunn, who I thought played really well in week 17 when they were forced to play him for Joel Bitonio on the COVID list. I thought he actually flashed usable skills in this offensive structure and put good tape again. I even think he dominated Cam Hayward to an extent. So I did enjoy his tape, not dominated, but he kept Cam Hayward at bay, which is something that Joel Bitonio has struggled with at times, as great as Joel Bitonio is. And then Blake Hance came in, the whole phrase, I met a guy named Blake in the locker room. I did not think Blake Hance had translatable skills. Nice guy, I'm sure. He arrived off of the Jets practice squad and all of that. So I don't really, as I sit here, I don't really totally see how he's a long-term part of this thing because, in my opinion, you have 2 good players coming back and along the interior. I've already mentioned Michael Dunn. I actually am pretty high on Nick Harris in terms of being a center. I don't think Nick Harris can be a guard, but I do think he can be a center of the future. And then I do think I definitely think Drew Forbes has potential. We haven't really seen Drew Forbes in in a functional setting yet, but I think they liked him enough to draft him, and I think there's something there with him along the interior. He had a pretty good preseason, so I like him. And think there's 3 functional interior guys there. I just thought that there was going to be interest to either replace Kendall Lamb or replace him down the line, Chris Hubbard. So, what you're looking at there from a decision-making process on their end. I didn't expect tackle because I thought they were fine, but this is, John, in my opinion, is tangible proof that they're looking at the big, long game here in terms of what does this team look like when 2-3 years down the road? Could they move on from Wyatt Teller? Could Jack Conklin meet an age decline play kind of thing at some point? They want to have a plan. So what, in my opinion, their thought is we want a guy who has tackle ability with guard translatable skills. They have that with James Hudson. I post a little clip. I've started to study him. I'm impressed. I really like some of his tape. I definitely see a moldable piece of clay for Bill Callahan to work with, and I really see a fit inside this offensive line structure because it relies so much on, even if they're a gap scheme team, power counter stuff where they're pulling guards, you need athleticism, and he has a ton of athleticism. We all know how much athleticism it takes from your tackles to go from, down the line in wide zone scheme stuff. So pretty pumped about what I think he can become. Again, I posted a clip on my Twitter feed. They're listed below my name here about what I think he can do in this offense. I'll write up a whole film room about where he ultimately fits. But I think that there's something there. And I certainly see they wanted another tackle. I don't think we're going to see players on the COVID-19 list this year. I don't think that's going to be a thing. But you want as many of these guys as you can. They loved his athleticism. If you listen to their press conferences, they were eager to get him in if they could and couldn't believe he was still available. So, it could not work out, but ultimately I see where they're coming from. And what I try to do with this stuff, John, is see where they're coming from. I will say the Tony Fields pick, we'll talk about Tommy Togiai in a second because I know you and I both watch Ohio State. We have opinions on him. But the Tony Fields from West Virginia take to me was if they had a corner up early they liked, or an edge, they were going to take them. They liked JOK, but I don't think they thought he would even get to them. I think that they were really worried about that, and they knew that they were going to prioritize a corner or the right defensive end, and they get Greg Newsome, and then they're going into day 2 thinking, okay, if we don't get JOK at some point here, whether he gets snatched up in the 30s, whatever, we really like the Tony Fields pick here because he's pretty similar height, similar size, similar rangy ability. I don't think he's as instinctive, and I don't think he can play will linebackers effectively, but I certainly saw him as a guy that was like insurance policy to JOK. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's the first thing that stood out to me immediately is the similar body type to JOK. It's just like a kind of mirror image, even though the athleticism isn't really in the same ballpark. However, in short area, at least when you watch some of the clips of him, you can definitely see that this is, and it's interesting, I think, in the sense that that they really did have a plan for this type of player in their defense, having this guy on their radar. Now, JOK, I'm sure, opens up an entirely different set of possibilities for this position, but I think it definitely shows that they did have this role that they were looking to go towards at weak side linebacker.
Yeah, I'm throwing up that Hudson tape. If you did not get a chance to check out my Twitter feed, I wanted to put that up and give you guys a visual aid of kind of his SMU game. That is the first one that I started watching, and I was like, wow, okay, there's something here. Nasty finisher, all that fun stuff, and moves well in space. And I'll have some clips of him moving in space, and there's a lot of Senior Bowl footage too. So, yeah, but I'm with you, John. Overall, like, I'm definitely a believer in keeping the big picture available, and I see a little bit of reshaping of the linebacker room. I think they really think Tony Fields is going to be a part of their linebacker room, and certainly a guy who I could see being a special teams whiz and a guy who could be on all special teams and sort of be a fringe linebacker. What it tells me is this. Even though they brought back Malcolm Smith, he's not guaranteed to make the roster. Even though Mack Wilson has played 2 years of football in Cleveland, has not even finished his rookie, is going to be in his 3rd year, not safe on the roster. I think Taki's your best as a thumper Sam, maybe 10, 15 snaps a game. I think they definitely like Jacob Phillips to be a long-term player for them in terms of a guy who can play Will and Mike. He proved that he could play Mike in that Week 17 game against Pittsburgh. And then I certainly think they're going to keep Anthony Walker for at least a year. So there's questions in that linebacker room. We'll break down each of them at some point. I'm not pulling for anybody to be cut. I'm not pulling for, Malcolm Smith or Mack or anybody to be cut, but it's just too much talent. Even if you want to say JOK is a safety, which I can buy that. I think he does his best work in the slot. They'll get him inside the tackle box at some point. So yeah, listen, I think the only pick that truly caught me by surprise was the Richard LeCount pick, because I hadn't even considered that player at that point. I think Trill Williams was still on the board, who a lot of us in the pre-draft lead-up liked a ton. But I get it. I think I see him as a Sheldrick Redwine competing player who can be a better coverage player than run defender, but they need a center field type guy. And I think Sheldrick has a little experience with that, but they want to challenge him. With the guy late at pick 211, you want to challenge that guy to make the roster and beat out Sheldrick. So those two, I think, will certainly be in competition. I do know Trill Williams went undrafted. I'm aware there's a disconnect there. I think that every year it happens where a player just doesn't quite meet what Twitter thinks, and the NFL has something more on him. So I don't know. But someone said, I don't understand the Tony Fields pick. To me, it felt like they were going to pick Tony Fields no matter what, whether they got JOK or not. He was the insurance policy, but they like him so much that they think he's going to fit in at some point. So, yeah, the thing that happened, John, that I was particularly interested in was a lot of people kept telling me they weren't going to make 9 picks. They weren't going to make 9 picks. And while they only made 8 picks, right? I think it's 8. While they only made 8 picks, that's still a lot of picks. So, I think they want to challenge the bottom of this roster, and they want to challenge guys who are fringe players at the bottom of this roster to push themselves to prove that they're better than what they have shown so far. And I look at guys like Mack Wilson. I look at guys like Sheldrick Redwine. I look at guys in the cornerback room, like, is MJ Stewart a guaranteed player anymore? I don't know. Is up front Jordan Elliott? I know he's only in year 2, but they need something more from him. Talk about Tommy Togiai, because you got Andrew Billings, who I'm high on. They signed Malik Jackson. Then it's like, okay, which one do you want to keep around long term? Maybe they keep Elliott and Togiai. I don't know. I shouldn't speak out of pocket there. Like there might be some. I just was not impressed by Jordan Elliott. So to me, it kind of rang out as like, okay, we really want another young piece of this defensive tackle room. I just think Jordan Elliott was slow off the football, didn't use his hands, didn't play with power, was pegged as this pass rush specialist from Pro Football Focus. Like, wasn't he like their highest graded pass rush guy last year? And I didn't see any of that in his first year. So, maybe, and I think the biggest thing is the Marvin Wilson signing tells me that they really want to push this young group to be better and figure out who is going to stick and who isn't. So, did you like Tommy Togiai out of High State? I thought the Clemson game, he was dominant. Over 40 bench reps at the combine. Very powerful player. He had some real reps against Penn State too. I think we had him as number 2 on our top 10 Browns big board at that point. We were pretty pumped about that potential landing spot for him, and then it worked out.
Yeah, we were all looking, I think, for a little beef on the interior at some point. And I think he came in a good spot. He's just a guy that there's not a lot to look at from. He just didn't take a ton of snaps for Ohio State. I really regret that he wasn't able to play in that Alabama game. I would have loved to have seen, 2 back-to-back games against top competition there, but he certainly just destroyed Clemson in that game. It was like a single-handed just massacre up front by him. So, there's a lot to like there. There's some guy, but there, like a lot of these guys this year, you find guys on both sides of the coin. There's people out there that don't like him at all, and people that love him. So, they're going to come in and see what they got from him. That's just, this is such a weird year in terms of, like, you're never going to see this again. You're not going to see a guy drafted with this many snaps, I don't think. In terms of, what do you have, like 200 snaps?
Like 248 or something like that. He did not play a ton, and he didn't play a ton the year before. And kind of in the year before even that, I think his freshman year, he had like 50 something. He has not played a ton of snaps, played like 200 each over the last 2 years. And but you see a powerful player who can maintain balance when contact is made. He maintains balance. He's able to reassert himself. If he gets a double team, he's able to anchor. He's able to work through split, get skinny. I think he takes the shock of an initial hit and is able to, like I said, stay on balance and find a way to still use a disruptive move. So he is a very, very much project player who is going to be worked with and formed into what they hope he can become, which is a powerful 3, in my opinion, 3 tech, outside shoulder of the guard. I think that's where they want to see him, is get some pressure from that position. That's what he played predominantly at Ohio State last year. I need to listen to interviews from coaches and scouting department to hear if they have any other different plan there. But for the most part, that's kind of how I see him. So they wanted a young defensive tackle. He's very strong. He's still quite athletic. He's still raw, still got a lot to do. But the thing that struck me again was the young age is the big thing. I think the Richard LeCount pick, where he was something like he turns 23 in September, is the first example we have, or maybe the Felton, Demetri Felton, which I have to watch him. I have not studied him whatsoever. Actually, I think he's the old one. He's 22 going on 23 in September. So that's the new youngest example we have. It used to be Jordan Elliott was 22 going on 23 in November, but now that's the thing. So when we're looking at this stuff down the road, I'll do deep dives on all of these guys' podcasts with local beat writers who can talk a little bit more about these guys intricately, so you guys can have a feel for who these guys are, and I'll talk about everything about them once I write them up. So this is not the last time you'll hear me talk about these day 3 guys or the first 2-day guys. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, in my opinion, how much people start to understand the age guideline. The age guideline is the biggest guideline. They'll take athletic risks going forward. Like their early picks are all hyper athletic on the relative athletic score. You see it on Twitter. RAS, MathBomb puts those up. I think they definitely trend young, and they'll bend a little bit on athletes day 3 in terms of not being the most explosive athlete, but you're still going to be on the young side, 21, 22, and then we got an example of a guy who can be 23 in his rookie year. We'll see if he even makes the roster. But, listen, an interesting day. I think they added positions. I like Tony Fields because I like athletic players in your second level, your defense. James Hudson has desirable traits. Ultimately, I think LeCount is tough. I could see him challenging. He's a highly regarded prospect going into Georgia. Did not meet expectations there, but Felton could be Felton could be a guy who is a player who could challenge Dearness Johnson as the third running back and a returner, and he's got wide receiver skills, so they might like him potentially as like a down the line if they re-sign Nick Chubb and maybe Kareem Hunt wants to go to another opportunity as somebody with a diverse pass catching skill set like Felton, going to be a player that they could eye sliding into running back too. We'll see. That's kind of what it is. Definitely day 3 is all about looking at the future, and that's what they did. So, like I said, I will talk about these guys ad nauseum. Somebody has made a good point that I heard, which is they didn't talk about they didn't add a defensive end. Well, they might view Curtis Weaver as their rookie defensive end. The guy didn't play all last year, didn't even get a camp in. There might be a way at which his he's viewed as like, hey, we got this rookie defensive end that we like here, so we'll go from there. And next year, my eyes are going to probably be on wide receiver and another edge. So we'll deal with 2022 way down the line. But Felton, if Felton stays, his question that was posed, if Felton stays, then I would guess he's probably the third back, and I can't see them keeping 4 running backs, so it would be Dearness leaving. And I like Dearness. He made some plays. He definitely, I think Dearness had the closing run there against Indianapolis, a big third down run there to close that game out. And then he had against the Cowboys, had a couple nice runs. He had 75, 80 yards in that game too. I think he's a fine back, but he's playing behind 2 of the best running backs in the NFL, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You're really not going to see a ton of time there. So, we'll talk about picks later. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about dime defense stuff. I mean, do you have any particulars you're interested in? Because Joe Woods has talked about he's comfortable playing dime. He wants to play 400 snaps of dime is a thing he likes to do in any given season. They were only able to play 16 or so snaps of dime last year, which is really hard to go find that needle in a haystack and find those 16 dime snaps. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Do you think they'll be in dime a lot? Do you think they have the personnel for it now? Which I should say dime, you're usually looking at 3 down linemen, a couple linebackers, and 6 defensive backs. So that's your 11, 6 defensive backs, and you can interchange corners and safeties. I think they probably feel pretty good about that structure right now with JOK providing versatility there. So like a dime look to me is give you personnel ideas. I wish I had a fancy graphic up in front of me, but a dime look to me, John, would be your two outside corners are Newsome and Denzel. You can make Greedy your inside guy. You're obviously gonna have Troy Hill as your third corner inside. Then you could put Greedy or a safety. You could put Ronnie Harrison or whatever if you wanted to between Greedy and Ronnie, however teams want to match up. You could put your two safeties would be John and Delpit if Delpit's healthy, or if Delpit's not quite ready to go, you put him back and put Greedy in the slot or whatever, or JOK in the slot. And if you put JOK in the slot, then that gives you Anthony Walker, Jacob Phillips, or Malcolm Smith and Jacob Phillips because they're a little bit more adept at coverage. And then you're playing three guys up front, Tack, Miles, and Jadeveon, or Jadeveon, Miles, and a big guy up front. Maybe you're playing Malik Jackson in there. I don't know. That's just kind of the idea of what it is. I will remind everybody, too, before I let John talk about this, we are doing a draft show tomorrow night, a Q&A. Myself, I'll be there. We'll have some others from the OBR there. We're going to take specific questions on these draft picks. I'm going to study my face off over the next day or so and have good answers for you on these guys. But just talk about dime. I know you're interested in it, man.
So I guess what I was wondering then is maybe a little bit more usage of dime, say some third and long packages where they use four down linemen and have one linebacker and 6 DBs. I guess what I was wondering is if you wanted to give that kind of a look, having a guy like JOK, is he capable of playing that middle spot? I went and looked up, some of the responsibilities over the last weekend, trying to kind of get my head into this. It's an interesting package, when you talk, after a sack from Miles, you're looking at 3rd and 13. You throw that, that full pass rush package in front of them. JOK can, he can mirror a guy like Lamar, or at least attempt to. He could blitz in that situation, and you could be looking at a 3 safety, 3 cornerback look. That was kind of like what I had in my head. I do want to say Nathan screwed that up. He misheard that. I went back and listened to that interview again a little more closely. What Joe Woods actually said was that in the past, in other places, he had run up to 400 snaps. And then he mentioned that he only ran 16 last year. And then about 2 sentences later, he said, actually, I consider myself a nickel guy. So I think Nathan misinterpreted that. It's been run with by me, by everybody I know. So I ran with it until I listened to it that second time. So I don't think it's really this 400 snap thing. I think he wants to run more of it. I think maybe some of the looks that I just tossed out there as maybe an example might be something that he could do. But I think you're probably looking in the more, 100, 200 snap thing, and we're going to play real base nickel. And I think Nathan just got a little over exuberant about it. And, I did too. I listened to it myself the first time. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I would definitely think that what they could do is, they're just the easiest sub packages, having JOK and he's one of your linebackers. He's playing your nickel backer. You got Troy Hill in the slot. And if you want to pluck a defensive lineman off the field in those situations, all I would do is slide JOK to the slot, run Malcolm Smith onto the field, and yank Andrew Billings off the field. Then you ultimately get that turn. Or some teams will do this, John, where they'll leave 4 in. That you can run dime with 4 defensive linemen. You could just yank a linebacker. You could take out maybe Anthony Walker or whatever, yank him off the field and run in another player or whatever you want to do. Some teams will play 6 DB, 1 linebacker, 4 down D linemen. Some teams will run dime as 3-2-6. So whatever you want to do there, but like the nickel, and you can also run 3-3-5 nickel too if you want to get crazy. You can run, your 2 D ends and a head up 0 nose, run 3 backers, put JOK in the slot, so you have Anthony Walker, you have Jacob Phillips, JOK in the slot, and Troy Hill in the other slot. Like that's the idea, but it's going to be how many tight ends does this team we play against? Do they like to run? You don't see a ton of 10 personnel in the NFL where there's 4 wide. Pittsburgh does more of it than a lot of teams do, but most of the time you're going to get a tight end. Does that team like to take like Travis Kelce, put him in the slot? Does that team like to split their tight end out? Or if they put his hand in the ground, okay, how are we going to alter that so that we're able to handle different slide fronts and things like that? So I'm interested. I think the dime stuff was a little overblown now that you said that.
And really like the reason it's been going through my head is I would love to see a package where we don't have any of those other linebackers in. There's none of them do I really want in that dime package. And if you could have a proficient, guy playing that linebacker spot like a JOK who can actually play coverage, it doesn't leave a Huckleberry out there for them to pick on, whenever they're looking for a first down.
Yeah, it's why I've been interested in somebody like Brian Poole, who's still sitting in free agency, because in a scenario, could you play dime, whatever, and have JOK just be your Mike Middle in that situation, which is not something he really did at Notre Dame. So I think that was your original question. Could he do it?
I agree.
He didn't really do that, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. Can he be your middleman? Okay, can he be your one backer? You slide down John Johnson, because John Johnson did a ton of that for the Rams last year. Brandon Staley, the new Chargers coach, talked about that, how he was their green dot guy because he could come down and take advantage of using him in the box because they had a weak linebacker situation the Rams did last year. So that's something he's comfortable doing. At that point, you take your two deep safeties. You have Delpit and Ronnie Harrison as your two deep guys, and then you have Greedy in the slot. You have Troy in the slot. You have Newsome outside, and you have Denzel outside. Or if you want to slide Denzel inside because he's comfortable doing whatever because he's so damn good, he's played slot snaps, you can have that option too and play Greedy outside. That's why I think they need one more corner. I don't know if they'll go spend on somebody like, if they'll go spend on someone like Brian Poole or Steven Nelson, but they need to get somebody. I kind of said earlier, maybe somebody from the Malcolm Smith market, like Malcolm Smith was a veteran linebacker who comes in late to camp. Is there somebody like that who you can trust to be heady? If I was going to get Gary and Conley, for example, I would go get him early because I want him to learn the system early. He doesn't have a ton of experience adapting to a ton of different things. So I hope they add. I don't think the roster is done. It'll be really interesting as we sit down and look at this thing, John, in the coming months, mixing up, getting this thing on a whiteboard. And I'm sure that's just funny because that's what they said, in these interviews. The DePodesta did after getting JOK, and Andrew Berry and Stefanski kind of have said, like, man, they're down there in the coach's office drawing it up. I'm sure they're doing what we're doing right here, which is, okay, imagine we take this guy off the field and put him in, and we run 3-down dime this time, or we run 3-3-5 nickel, or they could get really crazy and run 1-5-5 nickel, which is just a ton of linebackers and speedy guys on the field, and you just confuse people up front. So it could get really wild. But I do think that they need to add another corner. I would love another corner, whether he's inside or outside versatility. I think they need to add one. That's kind of why while we were going through the draft, we were talking about this and think, man, Trill Williams will be a lot of fun because he's a corner. He played a lot of slot snaps at Syracuse. He played some safety snaps at Syracuse, some outside. He could be a projectable outside corner, so we were a little confused by that. They have a plan. I truly believe they would have, if they wanted a second corner, they had a plan in place. If they didn't get one that they liked, that there's something out there for them. So we'll have to trust them on that. We're about 27 minutes. It was a ton of fun. Save all of your questions, guys. Please, 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 for tomorrow's draft Q&A. I'm going to post on this on the OBR Twitter in just a moment. We're going to have any and all draft questions. I'll try to have some tape there of all of these guys to show during this draft Q&A. We'll talk about the picks. There's been about 200 of you hanging out tonight. I love it. Appreciate it. We had a great weekend at the OBR with you guys. Somehow we had 1,000 people on 2 of the nights and 900 on day 3. It was absolutely bananas how many of you people showed up. So we're awesome. It's really awesome, and we appreciate how much support you've given us. John, thanks for coming on tonight, man, and we'll keep doing this every week, bro.
Sounds good, man. We'll see you next week.
Okay, checking out for the night, guys. Long weekend, busy. Going to go plant my face in a pillow and try to get some sleep and catch up with you tomorrow night at the Q&A. So appreciate all of you for joining, and go Browns.